Let's get salty!
Hey everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video, and we are about a week removed from the launch of Showdown in the Badlands. We got the Azerite Snake already getting nerfed to 6 mana, but a lot has changed and developed in the meta, and I thought I would provide you guys with the 5 best decks to climb with, whether it be standard, wild, and this time we will include Twist, as Twist will have the same season this month and next month. So a lot of decks. It's more than 5 for standard, it's more than 5 for Twist, but just go with it. Clickbait. I give you more content for free. Anyways, if you enjoy the content of the channel, if you like I've earned your subscription, please hit that sub button down below. Give the video a like, it helps us out a lot. And again, craft at your own risk, all of that. We're probably gonna get a balance patch, I would think, next week, which will see like the final Azerite Snake change and all of that. But these decks are pretty darn safe, at least right now. First, Aggro Paladin seems to be the best deck in the entire game. It just replay showing Aggro Paladin just great across all ranks. It's getting even at higher legend, and believe it or not, it's powered a lot by a card called Showdown. I still thumbnail clickbait. Trump say it's like the worst card ever. Yeah, Showdown giving you basically spawning 6 minions and making sea giants come down awfully quick. So you got that strategy going for you. You have Prismatic Beam where you play Showdown, you can nuke the board at the same time. Crusader Aura lets you trade in and get favorable trades, and you just have your good early game. It's a near pure Paladin list. Only sea giants are neutrals, and if you play Order in the Court, you draw 1 and then you get the other, and then you go into the Countess, which is then active, right? You have no neutral cards in your deck, so you can play her as well. Again, this deck is performing incredibly well at all ranks, and yeah, if you want to smark it up with some Paladin, and it's relatively on the cheaper side, kind of. I think we got 2 legendaries. You might be all right to go with that and give that one a go. Next, we have Rainbow Mage. Again, this deck has not changed a lot this expansion. It was really good last set. It's really good this set. We got Miracle Salesman in there for some 0 mana burn for our Sif, but other than that, basically the same thing we've been doing for a while. You play Sif, you nuke your opponent with insane spell damage, you have incredible board clears and with Inquisitive Creation, literally infinite value until you run out of mana, I guess, for Infantize the Maxitude, bunch of generation, a lot of burn, burst, you got big board swings with Elemental Inspiration. A deck I enjoy playing. I just feel like I've played it enough, but if you still have these cards, it's one of the best decks in the game, like tier 1, almost certainly. Same with Enrage Warrior. I don't even think there is a single new card in this deck. Oh wait, they've added Miracle Salesman just for the stats. It's a 1 mana 2/2, and I guess you can trade it away and all of that, but overall, it's the same thing we've been seeing for quite a while. They've added Gold Panner in there for some card draw. Plus, if you buff this up, it can be hard to remove, a bit of a cycle engine. So you got a couple new cards in there, but it's still all about like Anima. You're basically getting your fire stuff going with Sunfear Champion, buffing up all the cards in your hand, trying to hit like Decimator Olgra or Crazed Wretch for great, like, crazy burst damage. And you got Battle Worn Faceless, 2 mana Faceless Manipulator. Yes, card is really good. This deck is really good, but again, not on the newer side. We also have Naga Hunter, very popular deck to talk about on Reddit and Twitter these days. Not the most people want this stuff nerfed because you have basically Blind Eye Sharpshooter, smork your opponent down from in hand, sometimes OTK them. It's now built more of just a pure aggro deck where you want to just dump your hand at all times and then go off with Blind Eye Sharpshooter. So you have like Magnifying Glaive, you have Sightless Magistrate, so these cards just fill your hand. You just go face with like endless damage for dirt cheap. I can't stand the deck, I can't stand facing it, but if you want to play fast, quick games where you just smork it up and try and go off with your Nagas, well, this is a deck for you. Next, so we have a deck that popped up like right after my deck recommendation video last time, which has turned into a very legitimate threat on the ladder. Cleave Hunter, it's being called, based around always a bigger Jormonger. I know people absolutely love this card, but basically, with all the hand buffs we got going on with like Messenger Buzzard, Bestial Madness, basically you buff up a bunch of stuff in your hand. You could buff up a Cleaver like Hollow Hound, Stonebound Gargan. It's all buffed, and then you slap always a bigger Jormonger on it, push insane damage on like a bunch of minions, or maybe you want to focus just on one big smack on a minion, well, you'll note that one of the newer cards in here, I think this was for the mini set, Absorbent Parasite. You basically could slap this thing on. It's a 3-1, then a 4-2, a 5-2. You know the deal. And then put that on one big thing. And again, just get a giant cleave, OTK your opponent effectively, or just play it like kind of like a early aggressive deck with your early game. And there's multiple ways to play it. I think Jombre had like something like a 90% win rate to like top 20 legend. People are now kind of aware of the deck and play around it a bit better, but it is definitely one of the stronger ones out there. And yeah, you can buff up your Azerite Chain Gang and get really large boards, and even Hollow Hound as a 3-4, still seeing meta relevant play, but only in Honor, of course not in Death Knight. Next we have Dragon Druid. It's gotten further refined since we talked about it less. It does seem to be a tier 1, tier 2 deck. It really hasn't gone away. Last time I noted, why isn't Azerite Chain Gang in this deck? It seems like it'd be pretty good. Well, it's there now. You still want to play your like Snapdragons, your Jaren Gardens to buff everything up either in your hand or your deck, and then play a huge board of Dragon Golems and murder your opponent. And you can cheat out Fi. I just want to look at Fi because the signature is amazing. We're now running Malagos the Spellweaver to draw basically the rest of our spells, which are relatively cheap. So you can play like an Innervate. You could play an Aquatic Form the turn you play Malagos. And again, a very explosive, good deck, kind of more mid-range burst deck. And you get to play dragons, but not the Highlander dragon. So let's talk about it. Reno Druid is still good. It is not like top tier, but it's more of that like tier 2, tier 3 deck. Probably my favorite deck of the expansion so far. You've got the new Reno cards in here, like Reno Lone Ranger, which clears everything from your opponent's board, limits them literally to one board space, and you get really good hero powers. Incredible card. You have Rheastraza in there with that nest, which gives you a bunch of random dragons. Well, you get to discover them. They get 4 less mana for some pretty explosive stuff. It's gone further refined, though. You'll note like Doomkin's in here to try and help you ramp up a bit faster. Summer Flower Child, Nourish, Whittlebloom Seedsman, all these, you're running all the ramp you can. Wild Growth, new Splish Splash Whelp. Of course you have Astalor. Of course you have Ignis, but a decent Dragon Shell. But overall, it's really about getting to that late game, whether it's your Ignis, whether it's your Rheastraza, and it's just, yes, this deck does struggle against aggression. That's the big thing holding back, or like Plague Death Knight with the Plagues. We'll talk about that later, but really fun deck, and is really, it's proven to be a winner. It's not like people are struggling to get to like legend with it or whatever. And let's continue down the Reno train. We got 2 more Reno decks to recommend. Reno Shaman is a legitimate tier 2, tier 3 deck. It's again further refined as we go along, but of course you got the Highlander Reno card in there, Dr. Holiday. Every time you attack, this is a 2/9 weapon that summons a bigger and bigger frog every time. It can get pretty out of control, and let's say they ooze you, then you just start smacking them with Horde of the Windlord. Reno's in here. You've got double the Yogg with President Yogg-Saron and Yogg himself in some pretty good early game, and you even have a counter to Reno decks in Framester, shuffling those 3 frame cards into the opponent's deck. And Reno's pretty popular right now, so it's a pretty good call in Standard and Wild. We'll see that later. But yeah, really pretty good deck, and is doing a lot of good work, and there's a lot of new cards, pretty spicy stuff. I love Reno decks, so hopefully if you got the cards, you can give it a go. ETC's got your usual greed tech options like Viper, Steam Cleaner, Theotar, all that jazz. And then the last Reno deck I'll recommend, Reno Paladin, which is again been doing really well. People getting like top 100 legend with it, doing really well. We've already kind of gone away from going with the pure build with like Countess. It's just straight up a Reno deck. You got Reno in there. You've got other neutrals, but of course you got your incredible Titan, Amethyst, Anachronos. Prismatic Beam is just incredible AoE, but of course you have your other Highlander card that if you get this early, it is just incredible. And Spear the Badlands, basically every turn you get an extra option of a minion you can play, which is really darn strong. And lots of good early game, mid-range stuff. Just another really sweet deck where you can have a lot of fun grinding people out with your value with your big boys and maybe smork them down with a Horn of the Windlord. Seems to be a common trend between those two classes. And then last, I will recommend the counter to Reno and a deck again that's performing at like a tier 3, low tier 2 level of double Unholy Frost Plague Excavate Deathlight with your Reska. It's one of the 2 signatures I'm still hold out on. I'm not crafting golden. I'm gonna get that signature. I'm getting close. But yeah, you got Reska, which you can bring back with your Excavate reward. You've got Primus, of course, which you can bring back, or Chain Guardian. And of course, you play Hell Yeah, and like maybe a swing with Staff of the Primus can shut off like Naga Demon Hunter, can shut off those Reno decks, and is a pretty popular deck out there, and is not the worst for sure. Not the strongest, but if you like that style of gameplay, Death Knight is a way to go. And for Wild, we'll have a more brief overview, but again, I just will always recommend Even Shaman. It's a good deck that even bots almost get to rank 1 legend according to Corbett with. And yes, Trusty Companion, one of the new cards in there. Cactus Cutter seem to be making the cut, but other than that, it is just Even Shaman. We have Aggro Priest, again, got like 1 new card I think in here, and Thirsty Drifter. You can play that for cheap. He runs so many 1-drops, and that's about it. Go face, kill your opponent as quickly as possible, the usual deal. Reno Shaman, you know, you got your Shutterwalk build. You can repeat your Reno over and over, which is pretty gross. And you also can, of course, have your anti-Reno tech yourself. In Framester, got your Zephyruses of the world. In Wild, you could play Zeph, you could play Reno. It's pretty ridiculous, and is very effective deck and quite a bit of fun to play. I will admit, it's a more reasonable, fun style version of Shutterwalk to play rather than just vomiting Shutterwalk over and over, but it's still pretty darn gross. Reno Paladin seems to be a legitimate Wild deck as well. Paladin just got a good stuff. Showdown's so good at seeing Wild play, and of course you got like Dragon Queen Alexstrasza for some late game. Similar style of build to like the standard one where you just want to try and get value out of your Spear of the Badlands, and that could give you multiple Zephyruses and Renos and all sorts of goodies. So another really fun, very expensive deck to give a go, but certainly one I would recommend. And I'll leave it off with Reno Druid again. Seems to be performing very well, a bit more fine, not as greedy as the Martian list, but still got late game dragons like Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, Ray Boss, and Nixia. Of course, you got Guff, which is one of the most ridiculous cards ever. Elise, Reno, Zephyrus, another really fun deck to play, at least if you like that Highlander Reno strategy. And again, one I will recommend. And then Twist, which is like in the Ungoro phase. It's like classic up until Ungoro. It's going to be that way next month as well, but it's a not very flexible format. It's like Paladin Rogue. And well, we'll look at Dude Paladin, where you spam a bunch of dudes, you buff them up, and you got the recently buffed Vine Cleaver in there and the buffed Light Fuse Stegodon. Very smorky. A lot of people done well, gotten rank 1 legend. One of the best decks, if not the best deck in the format. Hand buff Paladin as well, super strong, mostly from the prior set. Not a ton of newer stuff in there, but still works out pretty darn well. Burn Rogue, Corbett got rank 1 legend and Twist with this, with the recently buffed Razor Petal Lasher. Basically the petals it gives deal 2 damage instead of 1, so you just point a lot of it face with spell damage and Street Tricksters, and yeah, it's a face deck. You try and kill your opponent, not much more than that. Jade Rogue, similar to the prior season's builds of Jade Rogue, has Mimic Pod and Bowelspine Slayer as kind of the newer cards in there, but a very similar strategy that we saw back in like the Wonders format, and is a pretty effective deck. Beast Druid is one of the more fringe decks I thought I'd throw out there, but a lot of the Beast cards got buffed, and you got like Bitter Tide Hydra, Living Mana to work with, and like Vermin Sentai, the buffed Evolving Spore. So a lot of kind of newer cards in there, buffed cards, something can give a go. Cheat out your Knight of the Wild for dirt cheap. And lastly, Face Hunter, because who doesn't want to play Face Hunter and go face with your Leroy Jenkins, and got Dreadskill Asima high roll with Trial the Drumongers if you can hit it. But overall, yeah, you can see Twist, not very diverse. And if you play during Ungoro, you won't really recognize any of those decks because they didn't really see play. That's one of the problems I'm kind of having with the format. Anyways, that's a lot of decks for you guys to try out. Hopefully you have luck on your climbs. Enjoy the video. Please like and subscribe. Have a great day and stay salty, my friends.